Now, if you watched the first half, you thought it was probably 2013 Syracuse versus Indiana, where Syracuse dominated the Hoosiers. But if you watched the second half, you were probably thinking it was 1987 all over again. This time, no Keith Smart coming in for Indiana, but it took 2 overtimes to decide that. Syracuse barely surviving after blowing an 18-point lead, winning 112 to 110 over the Hoosiers in double OT. Coming up on Orange Press Pass, I'll be joined by Danny Tao, Steven Sklar, and by Jaron May live from the Carrier Dome as we break down another cardiac Cuse game. It's Orange Press Pass. Let's get going. And welcome inside the CitrusTV studios for yet another edition of Orange Press Pass. Christian and Guzman joined alongside by Danny Tao and by Steven Sklar. Guys, I hope you brought your heart medication pills, did you? Because it was cardiac Cuse again.
Yeah, and it was a really close game, reminiscent of football season, honestly,
Yeah.
where they were playing all those three-point games. I mean, by the end of this year, I might need some heart surgery.
Now listen, it was an exciting game, but the thing I'm most excited about is the fact that it's over. I couldn't stand to watch another minute of that. I mean, it was up in the air the entire time. I really wasn't sure which way it was going to swing.
It was definitely an exciting game, first of all. Danny, let's start with you. What were your first impressions out of the Syracuse-Indiana game?
Well, Christian, my first impression is that the signature 2-3 defense for Syracuse needs some work. Now, Syracuse played their best defense of the night when they moved to a 1-3-1 zone midway through the first half. The 2-3, especially the wings, Cole Swider, Jimmy Boeheim, a little bit slow with their rotations from man to back to their position in the zone, and that allowed Indiana to drastically out-rebound Syracuse. 47-30 was Indiana's advantage on the glass, and that just needs to improve as the season goes on.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, my first impression of it was more on the offensive side of things, but when Joe Girard is hot, this team shines, and you could say the same about some of the other secondary options also, like Jimmy Boeheim. But pretty much what I'm saying is that when the pressure is off Buddy Boeheim to make all of the moves and to hit all of the shots, this team, this offense goes to another dimension. And I mean, looking at the final stats themselves, Joe Girard went for 22 points. He was 5 of 11 from deep, and he put up some circus shots, especially in that second half and in overtime, even though he missed a couple also. But you see this offense elevates its game, and Syracuse starts to look a little bit more like Syracuse when it does.
Well, why don't we get to those highlights right now? A little technical problems at the Carrier Dome, so we only have the first half highlights for you, but it was an exciting game as Syracuse took on Indiana for the first time since 2013. ACC Big Ten Challenge. Syracuse losing 1 out of 2 at the battle for Atlantis. This was a team that has never started 3-4 in the season, looking to avoid that here, and it was Jimmy Boeheim who got the first looks there, getting a friendly bounce off the rim as well to nail a 3. And how about his brother as well? You know Buddy is going to hit from 3 as well. Buddy Boeheim, only 3 for 11 from three-point land. This was one of the big storylines, is that Jesse Edwards kept it going in the game against Indiana, keeping up with his battle for Atlantis performance as well. Fortunately there, Race Thompson had a little bit of a game as well. It was really Race Thompson. It was also Trace Jackson Davis who really started to get going in the second half. Danny, this team started out really, really slow in the second half.
Yeah, you're right. Indiana opening up the second frame on a 12-1 run. And what I noticed from Syracuse in the second half is that after the 1-3-1 was working so well in that first half, they went back to the 2-3 and had the same defensive issues that they were having at the beginning of the game. Trace Jackson Davis just kept exploiting the open free throw line area of the paint, and Indiana kept feeding him. Why not? Give the ball to the best player on the floor, and he's going to keep producing. Syracuse didn't really adjust to stop it in the second half.
You want to talk about how Indiana started that second half off. I want to talk about how they closed it out. Jesse Edwards fouled out late in that second half, and when Jesse Edwards fouls out, the problems start to arise for Syracuse, and we saw that down the stretch. It looked like they had the game made again with just under a minute to play, but they couldn't hold on to the small lead, albeit, that they had then. Trace Jackson Davis, he shows up, he does the things that he does, takes over, and he pushes it into overtime.
and Syracuse needed an extra 10 minutes of game time to get it done, but eventually the Orange pulled it out, moving to 4-3 on the season. Let's take a look at some of the full-time stats. Again, 112, 111, your final score. Syracuse avoids that 3-4 mark for the first time under Jim Boeheim, and it was the Boeheim brothers who led the way, Danny. 53 points between the coaches' sons.
Yeah, that was an outstanding effort from Buddy and from Jimmy, and I think Buddy's going to get more of the credit, but Jimmy should not be overlooked. He was really the wild card that powered Syracuse's offense tonight.
And I think, Steven, the big surprise there is that Miller Kopp really supported this power scoring of Trayce Jackson-Davis.
Well, yeah, I mean, you have all of the scorers on the Syracuse side of things, but Indiana, they were showing out too, and they were hitting from deep. They're not the most efficient three-point shooting team, but Miller Kopp is one of those guys that leads the team in that department, and he showed out tonight.
Well, why don't we go on now over to the Carrier Dome where our Jaron May is standing by. He was reporting for CitrusTV, and we'll go to him now. Jaron, first of all, thank you so much for joining us here on Orange Press Pass. And we'll start with this. That overtime period was just so chaotic for Syracuse after the emotions of the second half going into overtime. What was really the turning point for Syracuse winning in overtime?
Well, Christian, the turning point in this one was when Jesse Edwards fouled out. You thought that would be the final nail in Syracuse's coffin because Frank Anselm was coming in, a player that hasn't given you quality minutes at all this season. He comes in and does exactly that. Grabs some big rebounds, and on the offensive side, he had ice in his veins. He goes 4 for 4 from the free throw line. Who had that on their bingo card? Frank Anselm being the hero in overtime, securing the middle down the stretch in some really important moments for the Orange.
Jaron, Trayce Jackson-Davis was clearly the best player on the floor tonight for Indiana. What allowed him to really get it going against Syracuse?
Yeah, Trayce Jackson-Davis, he's just a man amongst men. There's not an easier way to say it. He was just the most athletic player on the court on both sides. Defensively, he would grab pretty much every single rebound, even some offensive boards too, because he would meet the ball at the apex of it falling down. And then offensively, he was just way more aggressive than anybody on Syracuse's defense. He had 3 or 4 just hammer dunks posters that if I was a young Indiana fan, I would print it out, I would slap it on my wall because those were some ridiculous dunks. He is an athletic freak that will be just destroying the Big Ten all season long.
Jaron, this felt a lot like a prove-it game for Syracuse after their showing in the Battle for Atlantis tournament. What did the Orange prove today?
Yeah, prove-it game is a good way to describe this one because Syracuse just didn't have any momentum heading into tonight's matchup. They lost 3 of their last 4. They just went 1-2 down in the Battle for Atlantis. And the scouting report for Syracuse was, hey, get the ball inside the 2-3 zone at the high point of it at the free throw line, and you can pretty much do anything you ever want. And today, the Orange changed it up. They went from their 2-3 zone that they're known for into a 1-1-3, kind of looked like a 1-3-1, just changing their complete identity to take away the high post. So now, in the future, they proved that you can't just attack the free throw line and get whatever you want on the offensive side. That Syracuse defense looked a lot better, and now they have some momentum going into a stretch of their schedule where the non-conference isn't too easy. They have Villanova on the road, they have Georgetown on the road, and they start ACC play against a really talented Florida State team. This was a big win for Syracuse to grab some momentum and show the country that you can't just attack the middle of that 2-3 zone.
It's always trouble trying to figure out the Syracuse zone. Jaron, thank you so much. Be sure to check out his report later tonight on CitrusTV Sports at Twitter. When we come back on Orange Press Pass, we'll hear from the coach and hear what Coach Boeheim had to say about his team's double overtime victory. Orange Press Pass will be right back. Welcome back to Orange Press Pass. Christian and Guzman with you. Syracuse winning 112 to 110 over Indiana in double overtime. I bet you believe that Coach Boeheim had a lot to say after this nail-biting win. Let's hear from the coach now.
But a lot of it's just decision making. I told Jesse at the end when we were going back out with a minute or two ago, I said, no matter what happens, if the ball goes inside, don't foul. Give him the two. Give him the two. And he reached in and fouled, and it's his fifth foul. If he's in the game to get that, we get that rebound. And those are just things you got to listen, you got to do. And it's like when we're up 4, you got to move out on the shooter. And these are things you have to do. You can't, if they can make a play, get it in, make a pass, do something, okay. But you can't just let the best shooter stand there and shoot the ball. And there's no excuse for that. There is none. There's no excuse for that.
Syracuse has done that a lot this year. Christian and Guzman joined by Danny Tao and by Steven Sklar. Danny, Syracuse has had a bit of trouble with their threat identification about realizing which shooters they need to cover on the three-point line.
Yeah, and I think that's something that's going to come with time. A lot of these guys are new to Syracuse. They're new to the system. The only returning regulars to this team from last year are Buddy Boeheim, Joe Girard, and Jesse Edwards. And even Edwards was playing some irregular minutes last year. So picking up shooters, late game mistakes, personally, I'm not too concerned about that. That's just going to come as this team grows.
But it's also not really something that you should have to tell the players all that much. Like, this is the guy that's going to be scoring. This is the guy that's going to be standing out and shooting the three, and he's going to be that sharpshooter kind of guy for this team. That's something they need to be more aware of going into the game, to your point. But yeah, it is going to come with time. It's not just going to click right away. And I thought that the defense did improve a little bit today, even though they let up 110 points. I know it's hard to say that, but they were better making steals, getting Indiana to turn the ball over. So I think that there's been a lot of improvement so far.
And Stephen, Dan, do you agree with Coach Boeheim's point? Does Syracuse win that game in regulation if Jesse's in the game? Stephen, start with you.
If Jesse's in the game, maybe they have a bit of a better chance at winning that game, but it was sloppy at the end, and I think that was more this team getting a little bit gassed, or maybe they just wanted to go home, get the game over with a little bit sooner. I don't think Jesse changes all that much a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. Jesse's a good player, but Trace Jackson-Davis is on just another level. Jesse's good, but would he have really made a difference against one of the best players in the country? It's hard to say.
Well, one of the players that did really well for Syracuse, maybe to some fans' surprise, was Jimmy Boeheim. He was the leading scorer at one point for Syracuse until Buddy Boeheim kind of took over in that double overtime period. Danny, what impressed you most about Jimmy Boeheim today?
What impressed me the most, Christian, is just how well he played within the system. Like I just said, not many players are returning to this Syracuse team with experience, but Jimmy Boeheim, perhaps more than any transfer in the history of college basketball, knows this new system very well. He knows what's doing, knows what he's doing, and it's not always the flashy play, but it's usually the right play. And he didn't have too many big mistakes tonight. And for a Syracuse team that has a lot of guys that can do a lot of different things, a glue guy like Jimmy Boeheim is vitally important.
I was really impressed with the workload that he took on tonight, because in the first couple of games, he was maybe getting 10 shots in a game. Today, he took somewhere around 20 shots. I don't exactly remember the exact number, but he was taking almost double the amount of shots than he was in previous games. He's taking on an extreme, maybe close to a first option workload. He's not going to surpass Buddy Boeheim. That's not what I'm saying, but the two could work hand in hand, and they can really complement each other.
Yeah, you were right, Stephen. 23 field goal attempted for Buddy Boeheim, 20 for Jimmy Boeheim. I don't think a lot of people thought that going into this season. And I don't think a lot of people thought with the new additions to the zone defense that this team would cause 25 turnovers against Indiana, opposed to only 12 for Syracuse. Stephen, was it the 1-3-1 that was put in? Was it just the 2-3 zone causing a lot of havoc? Why was there so many turnovers for Indiana today?
Well, yeah, part of it was the 1-3-1. I think they played much better defense in the first half, and the stats would support that also. But this team is gradually going to improve on defense as the season continues, and that's what they started to do in that first half tonight. Second half, not so much. Overtime, not so much. But they're getting better defensively. They're forcing more turnovers, and they're converting those turnovers into points, which is a big need for this team.
Yeah, you're right. Converting the turnovers into points was what I really focused on. Syracuse outscored Indiana when it came to points off turnovers 33-11 tonight. You cannot look at the final score of this game in double overtime and tell me that outscoring the other team by 22 points off turnovers was not the difference maker in this game. Syracuse's defense stepped up when they needed it to, and it came up and played a huge role.
But Danny, you mentioned it earlier in the broadcast, is that this almost turned out really badly for Syracuse, because when you looked at the rebounding totals, again, it's the zone, but it's a lot to be desired when you have just a massive difference in rebounding. What was the big difference tonight, Danny?
Yeah, and like I said, I think a big reason that Syracuse struggled with really everything on the defensive end when they were in the 2-3 was that the wings were struggling to rotate around from matchup back to their spot to under the hoop to box out. That was difficult for them to kind of figure out some of the nuances of this Syracuse defense that they're running. Now, Syracuse, they got out-rebounded by 15 by Indiana, but more specifically, you look at the bigs for Syracuse. Jesse Edwards and Frank Anselm, just a combined 8 rebounds. And that's not going to work for a team if they want to win on the glass.
Now, when you have a team that's this talented like Syracuse, that can shoot the ball as well as they can, the last thing you want is for them to lose a game because they can't match up on the boards. And that's kind of the problem for this team, is that they can't exactly match up with the height and the physicality of some other teams. They're going to have to work on that. That's more of a mental thing than it is anything else. You might be small, you might be a little bit undersized, but you need to have the mentality that you can match up with any team out there.
Well, Syracuse definitely has that and more after a big win today over Indiana. When we come back here on Orange Press Pass, we'll play a little game of overreaction or not. There's definitely some opinions floating around on the internet. We'll tell you if they are overreactions or if they're not. Orange Press Pass, we'll be right back.
They'll test you. Try to break your will. But however loud the loudness gets, however many cheese puffs may fly, you're the driver, the one in control. Stand firm. Just wait. And move only when you hear the click that says they're buckled in for the drive. Never give up till they buckle up.
Welcome back to Orange Press Pass. Christian Guzman alongside Danny Tao and Steven Sklar. And guys, I know you guys are on Twitter, and you've probably seen a couple of the reactions or overreactions from the Syracuse fan base. Let's go through some of them right now, and you guys got to tell me if it is an overreaction or not. First one, we saw a lot of that 1-3-1 defense, or the 1-1-3 defense, like Jaron said, that it kind of looked like in the first half. Is it an overreaction to say that Syracuse should kind of stick to that 1-3-1 or even play more of it? Danny, let's start with you on that.
Christian, I have a question for you, actually. What is Syracuse basketball known for?
Oh, Danny, it's the 2-3 zone, actually.
Exactly. It's the 2-3 zone. It's the system this team has run for decades at this point. This is absolutely an overreaction. The 2-3 zone has proven that it works time and time again. Now, was it at its best tonight? No. But does that mean it should be completely abandoned after years of effective results over one sloppy game? Absolutely not. Total overreaction.
But the thing is, it hasn't really been working for this team all season. This entire season, they've proved that the 2-3 zone is going to be a struggle for them. So I think that this conversation is long overdue. It's absolutely not an overreaction. Look at the first and the second half in this game. In the first half, when Syracuse fell back into the 1-3-1 zone, they forced 13 turnovers from Indiana. In the second half, when they switched back to more of a 2-3 format, Indiana was able to cut the turnovers down to 10. So it's not the biggest improvement, but it's improvement nonetheless. Indiana, in the second half of that game, got an easier version of the Syracuse defense. And if that's going to be the case moving forward, they just have to get rid of the 2-3 as soon as they can.
Or probably something that Syracuse fans want to see a lot more, if it's not the 2-3 or if it's the 1-3-1, it's maybe Buddy Boeheim handling the ball. He had 8 assists today to lead the team. Is it an overreaction, Stephen, to say that Buddy Boeheim should be the main facilitator of the basketball on this team?
Of course it's not an overreaction. Buddy Boeheim is the best player on this team, and he does so much more than just shoot the basketball. But shooting the basketball is exactly what makes him the best facilitator on this team. When you're the #1 option, you're going to earn the respect of opposing defenses. They're going to close out on you, and that's going to leave a lot of your teammates open on the wing. You think of a Jimmy Boeheim or a Joe Girard getting open from beyond the arc. Buddy Boeheim is the guy that's going to free them up. And he proved tonight with those 8 assists why he can be tasked with that facilitator role.
Yeah, Steven, I agree with you that Buddy's shooting is what allows him to facilitate so effectively. But personally, I don't think that means that he should be this team's main facilitator. I think this is an overreaction. Joe Girard needs to be this team's facilitator. He's the point guard, leading this team in assists list this year, led them in assists last year. The point guard's job is to distribute the ball around to the rest of the team. And Buddy, his shooting is what makes him an effective passer, but you don't want him to start passing more at the cost of his shooting. You got to keep the shooting numbers up, which means give him a facilitator role a bit less than he already has and let Joe Girard handle the passing.
Well, if the point guard's job is to pass the ball, I can tell you the center's job is to rebound and do pretty much everything underneath the basket. That's what Jesse Edwards did today. 17 points on 7 of 7 shooting, 5 boards, 5 steals, and 3 blocks. And we saw what happened at the end of the game, Danny. Is it an overreaction to say that Jesse Edwards is the most important player on this Syracuse team?
It is an overreaction, Christian. And look, they won in double overtime without having Jesse Edwards for any of that extra period. But I think the most important player on this team is Jimmy Boeheim. Now, that may not be the Boeheim everyone thinks of when I talk about importance to Syracuse basketball, but Buddy Boeheim is this team's scorer. He's clearly the best player. Jesse Edwards is the big. Jimmy Boeheim is the wild card. He's what can free up everyone else if he's playing well. If he's not playing well, defenses can concentrate on Buddy. He has to play well for this team to play well.
I don't want this to come off as a knock on Jesse Edwards or anything like that, but until he starts shooting the ball 20, 25 times a game like Buddy Boeheim does, he can never be the most important player. It's Buddy Boeheim. Hands down, Buddy Boeheim is the most important player on this team, and I love that this comes off the heels of the facilitator question because his value, his importance is much greater now than it ever was before.
Quickly, let's get one more overreaction, and I think some people may be a little bit tired of the same starting 5 that's getting trotted out by Jim Boeheim. Guys, is it an overreaction today that the starting 5 should be changed in some sort of way, Stephen?
Let's not get too tired of it this early in the season. You know what? It's going to take some time for this team to mesh, and they're still doing that. They're still learning the chemistry. They're still working with each other and getting better every single day. So let's just give them a break for now.
I got to disagree once again, Stephen. It's an overreaction. It's not an overreaction, excuse me. Benny Williams needs to take Cole Swider's spot in the starting 5. Swider just looked lost on defense tonight. Benny Williams is raw, but he's more athletic than Swider, and he is the future of this program. Give him time on the court and let him shine.
Well, we'll see if those overreactions or not overreactions come true later in this season. When we return on Orange Press Pass, we'll take a look around the ACC, and we'll give you some final thoughts on this game between Syracuse and Indiana. Orange Press Pass will be right back.
Leaving hot coals improperly extinguished can cause a wildfire.
Hey guys, it's Smokey!
It looks as if Smokey is going to use the drown, stir, drown and feel technique. After the first drown, a good start. Next, another drink. And finally, a close feel.
Is it cool? Okay. Yeah.
Hey, Smokey, catch.
Oh. My bad, Smokey.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
They call me Maxie, but I prefer tripod. I was your above-average four-legged homie, and then wham, bam, minivan. Some people pity me. Now that's lame. I still run, fetch, and swim. And the ladies love me. I'm the ultimate wingman. Just don't ask me to high five.
Welcome back to Orange Press Pass. Christian de Guzman alongside Danny Tao and Steven Sklar. Before we give you our final thoughts, let's take a look around the ACC and see how the rest of the league fared in the ACC Big Ten Challenge. And Danny, I'm very sorry. Your Northwestern Wildcats doesn't look too good there on the middle right of your screen.
Yeah, I mean, I tried to follow Lucas Vogel, our esteemed sports director, but the Wildcats couldn't get it done for either of us.
Steven, the big thing that you see up there, Syracuse plays Florida State next on the middle left. They just got crushed by the #2 team in the country.
Well, Florida State was also down a couple of starters today and even their backup center, so I wouldn't put too much stock in that game today against #2 Purdue. You have to remember that Purdue's the #2 team in the country for a reason. They've been regularly beating opponents by 30-plus points all season.
And don't forget, fans, our next game, like Stevens and I said, it's against Florida State, those Seminoles. Orange Press Pass will be live here on OTN at 8 p.m. And this should be an interesting game with Florida State having a maybe lesser offense, but that three-point shooting percentage, Danny, is pretty up there.
Yeah, and I'm worried for Syracuse in this one. Just to be honest, I mean, coming off a taxing double overtime game, I don't know if they're going to have the energy for it.
Well, now let's get to the final thoughts of Danny and Steven. Again, Syracuse wins 112-110 over Indiana in double overtime. Danny, let's start with you. What is your final thought on this game?
Christian, my final thought for this game is that this is one Syracuse had to have, and they did. Was it pretty? No. Was it perfect? No. But did they win in the end? Yes, they did. They needed this to avoid their worst start of the Jim Boeheim era, and we know that's a lot of seasons. So getting the win was crucial, and they got it done.
Listen, my final thought is this team just got hot, so you better watch out for the Syracuse Orange moving forward. This is what they do every year. They don't necessarily start off as the hottest team in the country. They're never talked about as one of the top 10, top 15 teams, but what they do is they work on that steady grind. They get better as the season progresses. Today was a statement win, and you're going to have to look out for them as the season continues.
Guys, quickly, Syracuse plays Florida State next. Like we said, Danny, start with you. Does Syracuse win against Florida State?
They do not. They're going to be too gassed after a double overtime game. Florida State gets the dub in Tallahassee.
Steven?
No such thing as too gassed. Syracuse pulls out the win.
Oh, but it's a tough one as well. ACC opener for Syracuse down in Tallahassee on the road. Always a tough game against Leonard Hamilton's Seminoles. Well, that will do it for Orange Press Pass. Again, be sure to follow us on CitrusTV Sports for continuing coverage of the Syracuse men's basketball season throughout this season. Check out the YouTube as well, CitrusTV. For Danny and Steven, I'm Christian. Thank you so much for watching Orange Press Pass today.